Hello, it's Zeke Freak with another live style video. I want to do more of these because they're quick and easy, and they let me make videos about things that would be wouldn't be appropriate for a full scripting and editing and things like that. Um, so to get right into it, today I wanted to talk about two manga that I've binged recently: Spy X Family and Yozakura Family Mission, which, for the sake of brevity, I'm probably just going to abbreviate to like Yozakura Mission. These are two fairly similar manga, one running in um, Jump Plus and the other in regular Weekly Shonen Jump. The reason people tend to compare these two mangas is because they're both heavily feature and are revolve around spies, and Yozakura Mission came out pretty soon after Spy X Family started and became an unexpected hit with people. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline was on that. I don't know how long the gap was between these series starting. But I caught up with Spy X Family first, and I'm actually caught up right now because there was a new chapter today, interestingly. And I caught up with Yozakura Family Mission last night, and I thought it would be fun to talk about both series and sort of compare and contrast their approaches to somewhat similar subject matter. Um, this video will have minor-ish spoilers. I'm not gonna be like, obviously in a free-form discussion like this, I'm gonna say whatever I want to say, but I'll try to keep it reserved, as reserved as I can. But if you're completely spoiler averse, then probably don't watch this. So Spy X Family is about Lloyd Forger, Agent Twilight, who goes undercover in this very much like East West Germany inspired setting. It's not literally East West Germany, but it's very clearly themed around that, and based on both that time period and that kind of, it uses that kind of political tension as like a backdrop. So he goes in as an undercover agent looking to gain intel and come closer to a prominent politician. I believe his name is Donovan Desmond, offhand. But I read Spy X Family first, and it's been a little while since I read the earliest chapters, and I don't think his name has come up in the last few. And there was a break recently. Today's chapter was like the first chapter in like a month or so. So yeah, I think his name's Donovan Desmond though, and it is about this makeshift family that is comprised of a father who is a spy, a mother who is an assassin, and a child who is a telepath. And it has an ongoing storyline, but it's also mostly, or it's very heavily comedic, um, which contrasts Yozakura Mission, because Yozakura Mission is actually it's also comedic, and it has, on the surface, it has kind of the same structure as Spy X Family, but it also is a little more traditionally action focused, kind of. I'll get into that. But I'm just setting the stage for people who aren't super familiar. And then Yozakura Family is about a young boy who lost his family in an accident, and he ends up getting sort of adopted by his childhood friend's family, who is a family of spies. And it turns out his childhood friend Mutsumi has been, without his awareness has been targeted as the next heir of this family, this renowned family of spies, all her life, that he had no idea about. And he sort of, he becomes her he becomes her husband in ceremony, and that kind of like brings him into the family, and it's about his training to protect Mutsumi along with her various wacky siblings and whatnot. I'm kind of breezing through this because I really hate summarizing things, and I just like to talk about details. But So both series have strong themes of spies and espionage and things like that, and also are based around the concept of families. And they both take slightly different approaches to it. Spy X Family is about a makeshift family coming together, sort of by necessity or by tenuous connection through what they want. Because Lloyd has his mission, and Yor needs a cover for her. Needs a civilian cover for her assassin job, and Anya just wants a family. Anya is the child, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. Anya is the psychic telepath child that can read minds. Whereas Spy X Family is about, whereas Yuzakura Mission is about an established family that a newcomer comes into, but he's not like a complete newcomer because he was childhood friends with Mutsumi, so they've known each other, but he never met her family before the start of the series, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure. Now, I should mention right off the bat that I think both series are pretty good. I really enjoyed reading them. Currently, Spy X Family has 44 chapters out, and Yuzakura Mission has 78. But Yuzakura Mission is a weekly series, whereas Spy X Family is, I believe, bi-weekly. That is to say, every 2 weeks, because some people think bi-weekly means twice a week when it doesn't, and that annoys me, and English is complicated apparently, but we should get on the same page about that. Bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. But which do I like more is actually a pretty interesting question, because I feel like they both have a lot of the same strengths and a lot of the same weaknesses, but also it's mostly just a difference in approach. Some people might be compelled to call Yuzakura Mission a ripoff of Spy X Family, but I don't think that's true at all, and I think just reading a few chapters of it will kind of dissuade you from thinking that way, because while the style and tone and subject matter is pretty similar, the actual execution is pretty different, although there are some pretty striking similarities. But I don't think they went into it thinking, well, let's just make our own Spy X Family. I think if they were wanted to be a blatant copy of it, they could have been a lot more blatant than this, because there are a lot of notable differences. I would say the biggest difference to me, other than the fact that Yuzakura Mission has more action, is the fact that Yuzakura Mission has the lead characters are younger. Taiyo and Mutsumi are teenagers, whereas it's kind of interesting because Spy X Family is, you'd think from the premise it would be a little bit more adult oriented because the leads Lloyd and Yor are adults, but a lot of chapters focus on Anya and view events from Anya's perspective. So in a way, it's very interesting because with Yuzakura Mission you have like the more standard Shonen Jump teenager perspective, whereas with Spy X Family you kind of flip-flop between a more an adult perspective and a child's perspective, which can add to the comedy as well. I should probably also mention that both series are very funny, and both series have very wacky but endearing characters that reveal more layers to them as things progress. And I would also say another notable difference is that Spy X Family is slightly more grounded. Don't get me wrong, there are things in Spy X Family that do happen based on rule of cool or comedic convenience, but I feel like the thing is that I feel like Yuzakura Mission has what I like to call, when it gets to its more serious battles, it has what I like to call my dinosaur eats force field dog syndrome, which is what I've coined for, and that comes from Toy Story. Obviously, when Andy's playing with the toys And they're like, well, I brought my dog. And he's like, well, I got the dog, and it creates a force field. And he's like, and I brought my dinosaur who eats force field dogs. And that's kind of like how I like to describe certain methods of writing combat, where people will just kind of pull new gadgets or abilities out of nowhere and be like, well, I can do this now. And then the enemy's like, ha, I knew you would do that, so I prepared by doing this that directly counters that thing. And then everyone's like, oh no, what are they going to do? And then the hero or whoever's going to win is like, well, actually, it's either I knew you were going to do that, or I had something already prepared in case of that event. So here's a new ability or gadget or technique or whatever that's going to negate that, and then that's kind of the end of things. And that's not a bad way of doing things. I don't think it's an especially like smart way of doing things. It's kind of very functional and more to facilitate other aspects of the narrative. Like recently, in the more recent chapters of Yozaka no Mission, have been about infiltrating this compound, and a lot of the fights so far, I can tell, have been more about creating parallels between the siblings. So each enemy is like sort of a twist or a parallel, a foil, if you will, that's the right word, a foil to one of the siblings, and expresses some kind of characterization or theme about them. But the actual fights, in my opinion, are very much force field dog logic, which can be fun, but again, I don't think it's like outstanding writing in that case, but it clearly is meant to serve a different purpose. But because of that, things can get kind of wacky and kind of stretch the what's the word I'm looking for, the plausibility of spyhood, I suppose. So at certain times you kind of forget that these are spies in Yozaka no Mission, because things are they're so powerful, and so they just do such insane things through this force field dog logic. In fact, it's literally a plot point that everyone's after Mutsumi because the Yozakura family breeds like fucking super godlike spies with amazing abilities and such. They have like their bloodline is like it has they're born with excess somanine or some kind of wonder. Basically, it's like the badass gene, and they've all got like badass genetics, and all the other organizations in the world are so jealous of the Yozakura family because they just breed badasses. And so they try to artificially create like the badass gene or to harvest the badass gene. And so I feel like basically all of this is to say that I think Spy X Family is a little more grounded. Where yes, things sometimes happen because it's funny or because it's cool, but like it doesn't quite stretch credulity, I think, in quite the same way. It's not quite as wacky. I guess you could say it's less shonen, but that feels like a derogatory description, honestly. As far as characters go, I would say that both have high highs, but I will say that I think Spy X Family does something a little bit better by keeping its cast mostly contained. I can't remember any particular instances where Spy X Family introduced characters that aren't important or don't have some kind of recurrence or development or relevance to things. Whereas Yozaka no Mission, for a while, especially early on, it seems like they were almost neglecting developing the siblings, Mutsumi's siblings, the members of the family, in favor of just introducing new wacky characters that don't recur as much as you would think. Some of them do, some of them don't. But I remember that was a bit of a complaint people had about Yozaka no Family for a while, was that it felt like it lacked focus and it wasn't developing the characters that it had. That kind of stops after a while. I'd say around 20, 30 chapters in, they kind of stop just constantly throwing new characters, and when they do, you get the sense that they're meant to be important. Usually it's because they're new antagonists, and they start developing the siblings after a while. But I imagine like the first like half a year, that this series is running, people are like, man, there's a lot of characters that aren't going too far beyond their premise or their gimmick. Whereas Spy X Family is a lot more contained in that sense. The cast is fairly small and very, very logically thought out, and so I would say that there's less excess in Spy X Family, whereas there's some. Even today, there are still characters in Yozaka no Mission that feel kind of superfluous, and that's something that I tend to, when I think about a work and its cohesiveness, something I tend to kind of mark off in my mind is when certain characters or elements feel superfluous. And when you're writing a manga week to week, like that can happen. Sometimes you'll introduce things you think are going to go somewhere, but then it's not popular with the readership, or you just don't have as many ideas for it as you think, or the story develops in a way where they're not really applicable anymore. So that kind of happens. But I would definitely say I think Spy X Family is a little bit better planned in this regard, or at least there's more restraint in introducing new elements if they're not going to be super applicable. That's not what I meant to say. If they're not going to be fleshed out, I would say. One thing, though, I do think Yozaka no Mission has over Spy X Family, for me, and others may feel differently, this is all my opinion, is that I think the central pair, the central duo of Taiyo and Mutsumi is, I like it better than Lloyd and Yor. And I do for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, just on a basis of appeal, I know a lot of people in the anime manga community, they get tired of teenagers in high schools and things like that. I don't. I still love that stuff, and I'm probably not going to stop loving that stuff. So, to me, having teenage leads is a little bit more appealing for me personally. But also, I feel like their relationship is better developed and more fleshed out and just really fucking wholesome. I'm going to get into more detail about that. But in comparison to Lloyd and Yor, I feel like there's definitely sort of a slow burn, sort of genuine family bond, maybe romance, that is being built over the course of the series. But in Spy X Family's case, I feel like it's very slow burn first of all, which makes sense. You know, they're adults with their own lives and jobs. And the other thing is that this is all covered to them, is the thing. Like, none of them are sort of under the impression that their arrangement of this family is going to be a permanent thing. They've all got some kind of mission to uphold for the time being that requires that they be together in this family unit. And the other main thing, that if you haven't read it, is that none of them, aside from Anya, who knows everything because she can read minds, but the others don't know that they are, and a lot of comedy and mishaps happen because of that. But like, Lloyd doesn't know that Yor's an assassin, and Yor doesn't know that Lloyd's a spy, and neither of them know that Anya's a telepath. But of course, Anya knows everything because she can read minds, and because she's like 6 years old, she often like misinterprets things or jumps to weird conclusions. Anya's actually a really well written child character because the way her mind works, she's well-meaning, but she also has a lot of very childish impulses and gives into temptations and gets distracted easily and, misinterprets the very adult concepts in the minds that she reads as things that don't quite reflect the reality. So she's actually really hilarious. What was my thought? Where was I going with this? This is the problem with doing live videos. But right, the core relationship. So, because everything in Spy X Family is sort of a facade and it's kind of a cover, and I know that's kind of like the appeal, and that's the point, is the family that was started by, it's a fake family that was started for these superficial reasons, but eventually it'll grow to be genuine, and like that's great, and I really love that conceptually, and the way that has slowly built over time has been really good. But if you want something a little bit more immediate and something that's already kind of jumped to the next level, I think Taiyo and Mutsumi, his relationship in Yozaka no Mission is more that speed, because they already had this basis of being childhood friends, and there's a not the relationship is very wholesome and tender, and it's like very it's not super tropey, is something that I respect about it. It's not like a typical. There's no will they won't they, because they're already a thing, and like it's a thing that is acknowledged, and Mutsumi in particular is very proactive in the relationship, which I really like. There are most of the advances in the relationship have been because of Mutsumi's initiative, which is a nice change of pace, and they're both very realistically written for kids being thrown into this kind of situation. It doesn't like immediately it's nice and balanced. It doesn't immediately jump to the deep end of a relationship, but it also doesn't pitter patter around the early stages where you wonder if they're even in a relationship either, which a lot of shonen series have the tendency to do. Like, I think it's there's a nice middle ground that's been achieved here, and the needle has slowly been pushed in a more romantic direction over time. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that develop, because I think it's one of the strongest aspects of the series is just how lovable these two characters are individually and as a unit. And like the only reason I think it hasn't progressed farther than it has is because of Kyoichiro, and that's something I should probably talk about as well. What's really interesting is that both of these series have siscon characters, prominent siscon characters. Spy X Family has Yuri, who obsesses over his older sister Yor, whereas Kyoichiro in Yozaka Mission obsesses over his younger sister Mutsumi, and that kind of forms not the entirety of his character, but like it's like the main gag, and the main thing is at least he's hyper obsessed and fixated on her protection, and he's very doting and obsessive. And the same is true of Yuri of Spy X Family, although Yuri is also part of like the Gestapo, so it's a little he's played a little less sympathetically, whereas for as much of a annoyance and intrusive stalker that Kyoichiro is, he's still ostensibly, one of the good guys, and he's also the most badass, most hyper competent spy. And the reason he's so obsessed, well, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's like the reason, but like what we're told is that he's so obsessed with Mutsumi is because he failed to protect her a while back, and that's why she has the gray strand, is because there's a traumatic incident when their mother died, and Kyoichiro failed to protect her, so that's why he's so obsessed with it now, which serves as a contrast to Tayo's more balanced approach of protecting her, but also letting her, be her own person and not suffocating her in love, So there's a nice foil going on there. I can definitely see. I think Kyoichiro is probably the biggest hurdle for a lot of people trying to get into Yozaka no Mission, because especially early on, a lot of his character is gags about obsessing over Mutsumi, and his very bitter hatred of Tayo for being so close to her. And there is more to his character that gets, the layers get peeled back over time, but that never goes away, and I don't think it ever will. Like, it's not like something he develops out of, like, and I think it's partially because it's such a very, I don't want to say easy, but like it's a very convenient source of comedy, and it puts a nice stopgap so that like the relationship doesn't advance too quickly. It gives it a nice source of tension to be like, what are you doing? That's not allowed, So he's in a very convenient position, writing wise, in that regard, because if Kyoichiro wasn't around, these two probably would have got it on like 60 chapters ago. So because of just how compatible they are, so he serves a necessary purpose in that regard. And with Yuri and Spike's family, it just kind of adds to the tension because he works for the secret police, and he doesn't know that his sister is an assassin who started doing assassin work because she had to take care of him because it was just the two of them on their own. So so Yuri kind of forms like the fourth sort of unknowing pillar in this continuing web of people who aren't what they say they are, basically, and just kind of adds to the comedy. But both characters, both Koichiro and Yuri, are kind of psychotically obsessed with their sisters, which in both cases I think is probably the normie filter. You know, it's the thing that people might not. That certain readers might have to get over that hump to really start to enjoy these series. But if that sounds like a good time to you, then there's plenty of that in both of these series. In terms of artwork, I think that both series are fantastic for different reasons. The art styles are a little bit different, but both artists are very competent with both character design work and backgrounds. I will say, I think when there is action, I think the action is a little easier to read and clearer in Spy X Family than it is in Yozakura Mission. In Yozakura Mission, there's a lot of like epic swoosh panels and just the fights are a little hard to follow, is what I'm saying, and that's why I'm not super invested in the fighting. Beyond the fact that it employs a lot of force field dog logic, is because the paneling is just kind of like, and here is action. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not super clearly defined or easy to follow a lot of the time. So when there is action, I think the point definitely goes to Spy X Family in that regard. In terms of overall plots, I think both are pretty intriguing. Neither, I feel, has reached their apex yet. And they both series probably still have quite a ways to go. But things are definitely moving. There's a bit of mystery and intrigue in both cases. Well, I mean, more so in Yozakura Mission. There is mystery in Spy X Family, but it's more about the progress of Lloyd's mission, first and foremost. You know, the milestones in infiltrating the inner circle of Donovan Desmond and stopping a civil war from breaking out between Westalis and Ostavia? I think it's Ostavia. I don't remember. But, yeah. Whereas, with Yozakura Mission, it's sort of an ongoing... Right now, it's sort of an ongoing battle against another organization that is trying to replicate the badass gene and creates these human experiments, these badass agents for different reasons. And there's a lot of background lore about the Yozakura family that has been slowly doled out over time. But I do think Spy X Family wins in terms of having a more compelling setting and a more unique setting with this, again, this sort of inspired by the East and West Berlin sort of scenario. Is very unique for manga. This sort of alternate I'm not gonna say alternate history, but like alternate universe inspired by alternate history or by real history. It's very unique, and there's the setting definitely plays more of a part in Spy X Family than it does in Yozakura Mission. In Yozakura Mission, it's just kind of contemporary with a lot of world of badasses going on, but like, and there's like different organizations with different methodologies and lore and who they work for and how they operate, but like, for the most part, the setting is just contemporary Japan. And that's perfectly fine, but I do think, in terms of uniqueness, Spy X Family definitely wins in that case. And a recurring theme you might be noticing throughout this video is that I think Spy X Family has been winning a lot of points. But I do think it's an interesting conundrum for me, because I think there are definitely things about Yozakura Mission that appeal to me more than Spy X Family. The main leads especially, the design work, I think, just things baked into the premise like the childhood friend angle and the learning to become a badass sort of thing, whereas in Spy X Family everyone's already badass. So there's definitely elements of Yozaka no Mission that I appreciate more personally. They appeal more to me, but I think for most people, Spy X Family is going to be a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more well put together, thought out, and definitely more unique. And that's something that drew a lot of people to that manga in the first place, and why it became a big hit for Jump Plus is because it was very unique and very competent. But I do think that both series are very good, and if you like one, I find it hard to imagine you wouldn't like the other. That's what I will say. Which one you'd prefer is mostly a matter of appeal. I definitely think Yozaka no Mission is a little messier. It takes a little longer to find its footing, but it also has different attributes that could make it more appealing to people on an individual basis. In terms of objective strengths, though, I think it does lag a little bit behind Spy X Family, but neither series is close to ending yet, so that could change. But both are very good. But in the head-to-head battle, I think my heart says Yozaka no Mission, but my brain says Spy X Family, if that makes sense. The critic in me says that Spy X Family is the better manga, not by a lot, but by enough. Whereas there's something tugging at me. I was like, no, but Yozaka no Mission has a lot of the other things that I really like. So it is a tough choice. They're both really well worth reading. And yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to say. I just wanted to gush about these two manga I've caught up recently, and I'm going to keep up with. If you're in the mood for spies and family and humor and action and heart and all that, I think they're both very well worth checking out. So I recommend them both. I think they're both really good. And if there's any, maybe I'll do another one of these videos when both of them are finished as a retrospective and see which one really came out on top at the end. You know, right now it's neck and neck, but I think in terms of mass appeal, I think Spy X Family has Yozaka no Mission beat a little bit, but not by a ton. And that's basically my thoughts on both of these series at the moment, off the cuff, without a script, live videos. I hope you enjoy this live video format. I plan to do more of these because I think rambling is fun, and I can cover more topics that don't quite deserve the full video treatment, or would be difficult to do on my schedule or my ability with my shitty laptop and all that. So that's it for this video. Zeke Freak out. Ciao ciao for now.